Слушай, я что-то... Что-то это наоборот, квантовый резонанс. Ой. Evgeniy.
아,
питания надо шиш маслом. Масла нет, осталось. Ладно. Агрика. Про это и говорил, да? В чем вот это он и был. Я, знаешь, да. What is there?
Что есть красота? Случайная встреча, что чарует чувства, до боли сладкие поцелуи. Кто-то умирает за красоту. Мы за нее убиваем. Мы рядом.
Существует два противоположных мнения о том, как нужно управлять сотрудниками. Интересно, как...
With all the talk about Final Fantasy IX recently, it really got me itching to dive back into this game's world and enjoy its story all over again. While looking up on YouTube for the best version of Final Fantasy IX to play nowadays, a particular godlike mod crossed my eyes, and guys, this is the ultimate way that you need to play Final Fantasy IX. What's up guys, Blitz here today bringing you another video. We recently started streaming Final Fantasy IX again, and it's not a normal playthrough. Oh no guys. Not long ago, a few different versions of Final Fantasy IX became playable on current gen consoles via remastered releases from Square Enix themselves. These remastered editions all came with enhanced menus and text fonts, better character models, and
У тебя кто? Ты нет.
качество, выгода, скорость. Все в Сбермаркете.
Скачайте приложение Сбермаркет и получите скидку 300 рублей по промокоду NEW.
And one which is already very much associated with Evgeniy Kissin.
Ой. Национальный. Где выбирать что? Ну. Yeah.
Katanas. They're so rad that even the fake ones look pretty cool. But how well do they cut? Can you actually feel the difference between a $200 katana versus a $2,000 one while cutting? Well, grab your fedoras and stick around, because we're about to find out. Is your katana real or fake? Last time we discovered ways of spotting a fake katana. Now we're gonna chop some shit up with them and see how good they are at chopping shit up. Will these katana cut through time and space itself, or will it snap on contact? Find out on Is Your Katana Real or Fake? Last time we compared these two swords. One is a $2,000 folded steel differentially hardened Pulchen Kame katana that's forged and fitted using traditional methods. And the other is a $200 knockoff I bought off Amazon. Turns out there were a lot of weebs in the comments who wanted to see how they cut. Many stating it doesn't matter as long as it's sharp and that a sword is a sword. I decided to put these swords to the test on some rolled tatami mats to see if I could feel the difference. And what I found was very interesting. First, I was pretty skeptical about using the $200 Amazon sword for cutting. This thing feels more like the top prize at a Dave & Buster's after spending way too much money on ticket games. I mean, it's a pretty sweet ticket prize, but you'd probably have to ignore your wife all night just to win it, and this thing is definitely not worth a marital dispute. The first thing that I noticed while handling a sword is that the balance is very awkward. The handle's too thin and feels almost weightless when compared to the blade. And even though this is a pretty light sword, it feels weirdly tip heavy. It just kind of feels off and gross to hold. But in terms of actually cutting, this sword had no problem slicing through the mat. You can tell by the dumb face I'm making that I had to swing pretty hard to make it through the target, but the cut was fairly clean and the sword was in one piece afterwards. So I proceeded to chop some more with the Amazon sword, and that's when I started really noticing the flaws. Okay, so this is the $200 Amazon katana. It actually surprisingly cut pretty well. I thought it was gonna do a lot worse. I did notice some really intense vibrations in my left hand when I cut through. The handle is just kind of poorly made, and that's the biggest part of it. Obviously it's a sharp sword, it's made of metal. If you cut with the right edge alignment, you're gonna make it through the target, but very uncomfortable to cut with, I'll say that for sure. Even just gripping the sword, it's uncomfortable, but cutting, if I was cutting all day with this, my left hand would be done. So I mean, it's okay, it did okay. This is the hardest part, this is really... See? Ah, that was a good one. But despite the vibration,
Повышенное артериальное давление и частые головные боли значительно увеличивают вероятность возникновения инфаркта миокарда.
I was feeling a little sassy, so I went for a double cut, and that's when I noticed an even bigger problem. Oh, my hands. Whew. During the second cut, the blade had stopped dead in its tracks halfway through the target. Now, while my cut wasn't perfect, it was definitely straight enough to slice through the mat. I got halfway through, but it just stopped. Maybe there just wasn't enough force in the blow, but pretty close. You know, not bad for a $200 sword. I have noticed though that the edge is dulling very quickly. Yeah, it's like half as sharp as it was when I started. I'm about 2 mats in. Yeah, the bottom of the blade is significantly sharper than this top. Definitely a concern there. You'd have to sharpen the sword constantly. That just kind of has to do with the type of steel it's made of. That's right. After just 2 mats, this $200 katana had dulled significantly. It went from razor sharp to dull kitchen knife faster than a weeb can say kotobukiya. See, I'll show you. So right here is when I'm doing most of the cutting. So I'll show you how sharp the sword was when I got it. Pretty sharp. Now up here, where actually the cutting happened, it's actually crazy how much this sword dulled. Compared to how sharp the rest of the sword is, it's really bad. This is a huge problem because katana blades have a single bevel, which means they have to be sharpened by hand. This requires a very skilled sharpener to have a single bevel, which means they have to be sharpened by hand. This requires a very skilled sharpener to spend days painstakingly honing this long-ass blade by hand, which can cost thousands of dollars.
I am never gonna manage to recover from this.
So after cutting several mats, I'm gonna give this $200 Amazon sword 1.5 fedoras out of 5. It was able to cut through the target several times and didn't break or bend, which is good, but it was extremely uncomfortable to wield and became dull after just 2 mats. So in the end, the only thing this katana is really good for is opening up boxes of anime titty figures. All right, now on to the $2,000 Kami katana. Normally, I'd say this sword is too beautiful to risk scratching up. Not to mention they stopped producing this sword over 10 years ago. This thing is a legit rare drop. If you found this in game, it'd be at least a purple item. But for the sake of this video, rare drop. If you found this in game, it'd be at least a purple item. But for the sake of this video, I had to show you what it could do. And it definitely didn't disappoint. This thing cuts like a laser, and the superbly made handle really makes it feel like an extension of my arm, unlike the flimsy and awkwardly balanced Amazon sword. It's really clean. The only downside to the Kami katana is that it is heavy. This thing is probably a full pound heavier than the Amazon sword, making it feel a bit unwieldy. But the added weight does make cutting through the target a bit easier. I also didn't notice any significant vibration in my hands while cutting. Oh yeah, ooh. Well, that felt really nice.
Nice.
The handle is thicker and made of much higher quality materials, resulting in a smooth, shock-free cutting experience. Now, while this sword is a beauty, I cannot understate how heavy it is. On the double cut, I could barely reach the target in time with the second slice. This is partially due to my first cut not being perfect, but in general, you can tell I'm struggling to swing the sword quickly. Fortunately, this is the only real downside to the Kami Katana, because this thing is just as sharp as when I got it. It's pretty sharp. Now this top part of the blade is where I used to cut. That shit is sharp. The differentially hardened blade retained its edge sharpness noticeably better than the $200 sword, which is no surprise. In terms of cutting, I'm going to give the Kami Katana 3 Garuga meshes out of 5. It loses 1 point for being a little too heavy for my taste, and it loses another point for being so goddamn beautiful. It makes me not even want to cut with it. Alright guys, hopefully by watching this video, you've learned that there's more to a sword than simply being sharp, and the value of buying a quality blade over winning one at Dave & Buster's. Obviously, this is a pretty extreme example of price difference, but there are plenty of quality swords out there that are great for cutting that won't break the bank. I'll have links to some quality cutting swords in the description if you guys are interested. And if you like the video, make sure to hit that like.
Жизнь должна привычкой стать. Андрей понял. Настолько интересно. Ну да. Ну да. Что-то это самое.